It was nearly midnight when Simone Grant pulled into the cracked parking lot of the Evergreen Motel just off Highway 58 in rural Georgia. The neon sign buzzed weakly, half the letters burned out, the flicker of Eve Moti casting eerie light over the chipped siding. The air smelled of rain, old gasoline, and pine. It was the kind of place travelers passed without a second thought unless they had nowhere else to go. Simone parked her Jeep beneath a flickering light post. The engine hummed to a stop, leaving behind a silence so still she could hear the hum of insects in the dark. Her eyes, sharp and deliberate, swept the lot before she even reached for the door handle. Years of service had trained her to read space's exits, shadows, the subtle rhythm of danger hiding under ordinary nights. Nothing moved, but something in the air didn't sit right. She cut the ignition, opened the door, and stepped out, boots landing with the kind of quiet precision only a Marine ever learned. The humidity pressed against her skin as she walked toward the motel office. A bell above the door jingled faintly when she stepped inside. Behind the counter sat an older woman in a faded cardigan, her name tag reading Evelyn Brooks. She looked up startled, then forced a polite smile. "Evening, honey," Evelyn said, voice raspy from years of cigarettes. "You driving through?" "Just need a room for the night," Simone replied evenly. Her tone carried that soft authority people noticed but couldn't quite place, polite but unmistakably in control. Evelyn slid the logbook toward her. "Not many folks stop by this late," she murmured, glancing nervously toward the window. "Got a few fellas around sometimes, but they keep to themselves." Simone nodded, handed over her ID, and waited as Evelyn fumbled with the old key hooks on the wall. Her eyes flicked briefly toward the parking lot. 3 motorcycles gleamed under the dim lights near the far corner, black, chrome, custom decals, the kind that didn't belong to tourists. "Room 7, Evelyn said finally, setting the brass key on the counter. "Lock up tight, sugar. We've had some noise lately." Simone met her eyes for a moment longer than was comfortable. "Noise?" Evelyn's fingers twitched. "Boys from down the road. Think they run this place. They don't like strangers much." Simone gave a single nod, slipped the key into her pocket, and walked back out into the humid dark. The air was heavier now, not just with moisture, but with that subtle pressure she'd learned to recognize before ambushes, before firefights, before everything went sideways. Room 7 sat near the end of the row, half covered in ivy and facing the woods. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, and let her eyes adjust to the faint yellow glow of the single lamp. The room smelled of bleach and mildew, a sagging mattress, an old dresser, a humming mini-fridge. Ordinary. But Simone didn't believe in ordinary. She did a quiet sweep under the bed, behind the curtains, even inside the air vent. Her motions were calm, methodical, precise. Satisfied, she sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, pretending to scroll through emails while she mentally mapped the exits and nearby structures. That's when she saw it movement outside, faint but deliberate. A reflection in the side mirror of her Jeep. 3 figures loitering near the bikes, cigarettes glowing like fireflies in the dark. They weren't talking. They were watching. Simone's pulse didn't rise. She'd learned long ago that fear was wasted energy. She reached into her duffel, her fingers brushing against the smooth metal of a concealed tactical bracelet, harmless looking, but equipped with a compact locator beacon. She pressed her thumb against it once. A faint vibration confirmed it was live. She waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The figures moved closer, pretending casualness, but their shadows betrayed the rhythm of a plan. One of them, tall, broad, with a baseball cap turned backward, gestured toward her room. Another laughed softly. The third flicked his cigarette to the ground. They thought they were unseen. They weren't. Simone stood, turned off the lamp, and moved to the window. The night pressed against the glass like a held breath. Then came the knock. 3 short raps light, almost polite. She didn't answer. A pause, then louder knocks. "Hey!" a man's voice called out. "You left your lights on!" Simone said nothing. Her Jeep's lights were off. Another voice, rougher. "Lady, you hear me? Just trying to help." The doorknob rattled slightly. Then came a third voice, female this time, sharp, mocking. Maybe she's scared. Ain't gotta be scared, sweetheart, we just want to talk. Simone's expression didn't change. She stepped silently to the dresser, slipped off her jacket and pulled her hair into a tight knot. Her posture shifted, relaxed but alert. Her body language changed from traveler to tactician. The woman outside laughed again. What's the matter? Cat got your tongue? Simone moved toward the door, stopping just short of touching it. Motel's closed, she said evenly. Go home. A brief silence followed. Then the first man spoke again, this time without the pretense of kindness. That ain't how this works. The sound of boots scraping against gravel followed. Simone could hear them repositioning, two to the front, one circling to the back. Her mind calculated distance, angles, reaction times. The back window creaked. A hand tested the latch. Simone moved fast, catching the thin wooden chair by the bed and wedging it under the door handle. Then she crossed to the rear window, pressed her palm against the frame, and waited. The moment she heard the latch click, she slammed the window down with controlled force, catching the intruder's wrist. A muffled curse tore through the night. You're gonna regret that, the voice snarled. Simone's voice was calm, deadly quiet. Already do. The man yanked his hand free. Footsteps retreated, then regrouped. She could hear them whispering, agitated, confused. They hadn't expected resistance. Inside, Simone's breathing remained slow, measured. She knew better than to escalate blindly. They'd make their next move soon. And when they did, she'd be ready. Outside, the gang leader, Bobby Langston, spat on the ground. She's one of those tough ones, he muttered to the others. Go get Riley. The name made Simone's blood run cold. She didn't know it yet, but Sheriff Tom Riley wasn't law enforcement, not really. He was the kind of man who looked the other way for a price. And tonight, someone had already paid him. 10 minutes later, flashing lights pierced the darkness. The sound of a siren, not urgent but deliberate, almost performative, echoed off the pines. Bobby and his crew stepped back, smirking, as Riley's cruiser pulled up beside the bikes. Simone stayed silent, listening. The sheriff's door creaked open. Boots crunched on gravel. His voice carried that lazy southern drawl that always managed to sound both friendly and threatening. Evening, folks. Heard there was a little disturbance. Just some lady causing trouble, Bobby replied easily. Think she's up to something. Might be drugs. You know how it is. Simone's jaw tightened. She recognized the rhythm, the same lie that had trapped too many good people before. She moved quietly to the nightstand, slipped open her phone's encrypted contacts, and sent a coded ping to Captain Lydia Monroe. The message was only 3 words, compromised, stay clear. Outside, Riley banged on her door. Ma'am, this is Sheriff Riley. Need you to open up right now. Simone stayed still. I said open the door, he shouted, louder this time. She glanced at the keyhole, her instincts screaming that something was off. Real deputies didn't shout like that without reason. She considered the angle, 4 men outside, 1 weapon visible, probably 2 more concealed. Riley knocked again, the sound turning into a sharp kick. Last chance, lady. Simone moved silently toward the side window. Through the thin curtain, she could see his reflection, tall, barrel-chested, sweat on his collar, hand resting on his holster. Bobby and the others hovered nearby, pretending to be concerned citizens. She could have opened the door. She could have explained. But experience had taught her that sometimes authority was the mask danger wore best. Another kick. The frame splintered. Simone exhaled once, calm, focused, and pressed a small button on the inside of her wristband. A faint vibration pulsed. The signal was out. As the door burst inward, she was already 2 steps to the left, out of the entry line. Riley stumbled in first, followed by Bobby. The others hesitated near the threshold. Hands where I can see 'em, the sheriff barked. Simone raised them slowly, expression neutral. You got a warrant, Bobby laughed. She's mouthy. Bet that changes soon. Riley ignored him. Ma'am, we got reports of illegal substances. From who? Simone interrupted, her voice low but sharp. Riley's smile didn't reach his eyes. Anonymous tip. He motioned for one of the men to check her bag. Simone didn't move. She let them unzip it, her spare clothes, a field notebook, a folded Marine ID. The man froze. Boss, he muttered, pulling out the badge. Riley snatched it, his face shifting from smug to uncertain. What's this supposed to be? Simone's tone stayed even. Active duty Marine Corps. Identification's genuine. You might want to reconsider what you're doing. Bobby stepped forward, trying to grab the ID. Riley held up a hand, his voice strained. Back off. The gang leader scowled. You said this would be easy. Simone's gaze cut to him, cold as glass. You just made it harder. A tense silence filled the room. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, the air thick with the scent of coming rain. Then, faintly, Simone heard it, a low hum, far off, barely audible beneath the wind. Military-grade engines, reinforcements. Riley didn't. He straightened, forcing confidence back into his voice. All right, Marine, he said mockingly, tossing the ID onto the bed. Why don't you explain what someone like you's doing in a place like this? Simone met his gaze. Following a lead, same kind of lead that's about to expose you. The words hit harder than a weapon. Riley blinked, his jaw tightening. Bobby shifted nervously. The woman, Tina Carver, stepped back, eyes narrowing. What's that supposed to mean? Riley demanded. Simone didn't answer. She didn't need to. Outside, the distant rumble grew louder. Not thunder now, but tires on wet asphalt. 2 unmarked SUVs turned off the highway and rolled into the motel lot. Their headlights cut through the rain. Bobby cursed under his breath. Who's that? Riley turned toward the door, but it was too late. The first SUV door opened, and a tall black man in plain clothes stepped out, badge glinting in the rainlight. Sergeant Malcolm Price, from the county's Internal Investigations Unit. He looked directly at Riley. Evening, Sheriff, he said coolly. We got a few questions about your overtime reports, and some friends you've been protecting. Riley's face drained of color. Now hold on a sec. Price nodded toward Simone. You all right, Marine? Simone finally allowed herself a faint smile. Just cleaning house. Riley reached for his belt, but one of Price's agents was faster, moving in to disarm him with a swift motion. Bobby tried to bolt, but Tina froze where she stood, eyes wide as the SUV's doors swung open and more agents fanned out. The storm finally broke, then rain pouring down, thunder rolling overhead. Inside the room, Simone stood still, unshaken, her calm at odds with the chaos outside. She'd walked into this trap knowing something like it could happen. What the gang didn't know was that she wasn't the hunted. She was bait. Price stepped closer, lowering his voice. We've been tracking them for months, he said. Didn't expect you'd be the one to flush them out. Simone's tone was steady. Guess I saved you the trouble. He nodded once. We'll handle the cleanup. Simone looked toward the rain streaking down the window. I'm staying till it's done. Price smiled faintly. Didn't figure you for the type to walk away early. She didn't reply. Her focus was elsewhere, on the sound of the cuffs clicking around Riley's wrists, the look of disbelief on Bobby's face, the quiet satisfaction of justice creeping in where corruption once thrived. The night that began as an ambush had ended as a reckoning. Simone exhaled slowly, rolling her shoulders. The storm outside had eased to a drizzle, but the air felt cleaner somehow, like the weight of the night had finally lifted. Price turned toward her. You know this isn't over, right? Simone's eyes were steady. It never is. Outside, the neon sign flickered again, briefly illuminating the soaked pavement and the faint reflection of a Marine standing her ground, calm, unbroken, unafraid. And in that quiet aftermath, she knew this was only the beginning. The rain had slowed to a mist by morning, leaving the Evergreen Motel cloaked in a thin veil of fog. Puddles glistened beneath the flickering sign, and the air carried that damp, metallic scent that follows a long storm. Simone Grant stood outside room 7, arms crossed, her jacket zipped high against the chill. The parking lot was quiet now, the bikes gone, the gang's black pickup towed off as evidence. Only 2 unmarked SUVs remained, parked neatly near the office. Inside one, agents were still sorting through bags of confiscated cash, unregistered firearms, and ledgers that tied the gang's operations to Sheriff Tom Riley. Simone's eyes scanned the horizon. The world always looked cleaner after chaos, she thought. But she knew better. Surface calm rarely meant safety. Sergeant Malcolm Price approached from the lot, his boots crunching against gravel. He carried 2 styrofoam cups of coffee, steam curling upward like ghosts. "You look like you haven't slept," he said, handing her one. "I don't," Simone replied, taking it. "Not after nights like that." Price nodded. "Can't blame you. Riley's already been transferred to county custody. The others will follow. You did good work." "I didn't do it for praise." "Didn't figure you did." Price shook his head. "Not even close. His brother, Ray Langston, moved out of state a few years back. No record since. But there's a rumor he's back under a new name. Some say he's running operations that go beyond Georgia gun routes, stolen goods, maybe even protection money from local businesses." Simone paced slowly. "And he used the motel as a handoff point." "Exactly, quiet, forgotten, cash-based, nobody notices." She stopped at the window, watching the slow crawl of traffic along the wet highway. "If Ray's back, he won't let this slide. His people will want to know who burned their bridge." Price sighed. "Then you might need to lay low for a bit." Simone turned to face him. "That's not what Marines do." He smiled faintly. "Didn't think you'd say otherwise." Evening crept in slow and heavy. The motel lights flickered to life one by one, casting long yellow beams across the fog. Simone stepped outside, breathing in the cool air. The sky was the color of steel. She walked toward the vending machine by the office, her senses scanning automatically footsteps, distant car doors, the faint hum of an approaching engine. Somewhere nearby, someone was watching. She didn't look around, didn't break pace. Instead, she dropped a coin into the slot, pressed the button for water, and waited. A black pickup slowed on the road, its windows tinted too dark for the county's vehicle laws. The engine idled for a moment, then rolled on. Simone twisted the cap off the bottle and took a sip. Her eyes followed the red taillights until they disappeared beyond the curve. She knew surveillance when she saw it. Price came out of his SUV moments later, noticing her expression. "Problem?" "Not yet," Simone said, "but they're scouting. Whoever's left knows Riley's gone." He frowned. "You think they'll come after you?" "They already did," she said evenly. "They just don't realize they failed." That night, Simone couldn't shake the unease. She kept the lights off in her room, sitting near the window as rain began to fall again, softer this time. Every sound felt amplified: the rustle of leaves, the hum of old pipes, the creak of the wooden beams. At exactly 2:17 a.m., her phone vibrated once. A secure message from Captain Lydia Monroe. "Orders received. Remain embedded. Verify ties to Langston Network. Reinforcements pending." Simone stared at the message, then deleted it instantly. Reinforcements meant the situation had escalated beyond a local arrest. What began as a motel ambush had just become part of a wider investigation, one that could expose an organized network operating across multiple states. She leaned back, exhaling slowly. The mission had changed. Across town, in a dimly lit warehouse near the river, Ray Langston slammed his fist on a table scattered with maps and receipts. "Bobby's in custody," he growled. "Riley, too. That's 2 liabilities in one night." A man standing nearby shifted uneasily. "Sheriff's supposed to handle cleanup." "He handled nothing," Ray snapped. "Who's the woman?" "Name's Simone Grant. They said she was alone." Ray's eyes narrowed. "Then how did the county show up in 5 minutes?" No one answered. He leaned forward, voice low. "Find out who she is, and when you do, make sure she doesn't leave that town." Back at the motel, Simone stirred at the faint sound of tires crunching over gravel. She glanced at her watch. 3:06 a.m. A car. Slow, deliberate. The same black pickup from before. She moved silently toward the window. A figure stepped out, wearing a dark jacket, moving carefully, scanning the rows of rooms. The headlights clicked off. Simone felt her heartbeat settle into the familiar rhythm of readiness, steady, cold, unhurried. She reached into her duffel and retrieved her Marine-issued earpiece. It clicked softly as she activated it, linking to a closed military channel. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Echo 1 to base. Eyes on potential recon. Static." Then Captain Monroe's calm voice. "Acknowledged. Hold position. No engagement unless threatened. Support inbound." Simone's eyes stayed fixed on the parking lot. The figure moved closer to the office, then to room 5, glancing inside each window. He wasn't looking for her. He was searching for someone else, maybe a witness. The thought chilled her more than the night air. She waited until he passed, then quietly reached for her jacket. Something told her the motel's silence was about to end again, and this time she wouldn't just be defending herself. The black pickup eased to a stop at the far end of the lot, engine murmuring low enough to blend with the rain. Simone Grant watched the driver through the thin motel curtain, counting beats between each movement. He wasn't a drifter. He moved like someone who had driven this route 100 times and learned where shadows did the most work. The man adjusted his cap and walked past room 5, then 6, then paused at Evelyn Brooks's office. He tested the handle gently, as if even the knob might be a witness. When it didn't turn, he crouched, checked beneath the sill, and tried again. The quiet patience set Simone's instincts on edge. Patience meant training. Simone slipped on her jacket and opened her door with the smallest motion, letting the latch settle without a click. The rain made a soft curtain between them. She kept to the narrow strip of overhang, moving along the wall with calm, unhurried steps until she reached the office window. "Closed," she said evenly, just loud enough to carry. The man straightened and turned. Young, lean, eyes too alert for a casual prowler. He lifted his hands part way, not in surrender, more to show they were empty. "Didn't mean trouble," he said. "Just looking for soda. Machine ate my dollar." "There's another station 2 miles east," Simone replied. "Brighter lights, more cameras." A flicker crossed his face. Surprise hardened into calculation. "Didn't catch your name. You don't need it." He glanced past her toward the row of rooms. "Place seems quiet. Stay that way and we'll agree this never happened." He smiled without warmth. "You handled the mess last night. Word gets around." "From who?" "Folks who notice. Sheriff on a bus before sunrise, boys in cuffs, county cars posted like it's a parade." He shrugged like a man discussing weather. "I respect efficiency." Simone watched his hands, his shoulders, the angle of his feet. He was stalling, measuring distance, deciding if the office door or the truck was closer. He wasn't here alone. The pickup's cab carried weight it shouldn't. "Respect travels both ways," she said. "You leave, we're square." He looked at the ground as if embarrassed. "Wish I could. But I've got to ask Miss Brooks a question. She's resting." "Then maybe you can answer." His tone softened. "A ledger went missing. Book with handwriting and numbers. Someone will pay to get it back." Simone kept her breathing level. They were fishing for losses. "No book here." "Pity," he said. "It keeps people safe." Simone let a small silence sit between them. "Safe for who?" He slipped his hands into his jacket pockets. "Empty," but the posture said habit. "For everyone who minds their work." "Everyone," she repeated. Through the rain, Simone heard another sound, a faint scuff near the vending machine. A second watcher. The first man didn't glance over. That told her everything. He trusted his partner to do his own job. The partner was edging toward room 7. "Your friend is on the wrong door," Simone said. The man didn't blink. "He's new, learning." "You picked the wrong classroom." He sighed as if disappointed in himself. "You're right. I'll fix it." He took a step like he was heading back, then moved faster, cutting the angle not toward the truck, but toward Simone's shoulder. He aimed to slip by, bump the office door, force a scramble. Simone shifted her stance, half step back, half step left, granting passage while removing contact. The man reached for the knob and Simone tapped the back of his wrist with 2 fingers, redirecting just enough to make his hand miss the metal. The motion looked almost polite. It wasn't. "Try again," she said calmly. He reset, sharper now, but the door stayed closed beneath the quiet certainty of her posture. The rain ticked down the eaves. His jaw tightened. "Didn't plan on trouble," he murmured. "You brought it anyway." From the corner of her eye, Simone tracked the second watcher near the vending machine. He'd slid a thin tool under the window of room 7, testing for play. Simone spoke without turning. 2 steps back from that window, palms visible, silence. The second watcher froze, then lifted his hands into the light. The first man studied her. "Marine." Simone didn't respond. He nodded once, as if accepting a rule he hadn't written. Okay, I'm going to open my jacket slow, pull out a card. It's just a phone number. You won't need it. He gave a small, rueful laugh. Everybody needs a number. He peeled the jacket aside. Inside pocket, white card, black ink. He raised it between two fingers. If anyone asks for Ray, tell him Eli was respectful. Simone took the card without looking. Eli, your partner is leaving first. The second watcher stepped away from room 7, boots splashing. He kept his hands up and moved toward the truck door. Eli waited until the passenger side closed, then gave Simone a thin smile. Miss Brooks didn't do anything wrong, he said. Don't make her a banner for something bigger. She's not a banner, Simone answered. She's a witness. Eli's smile faded. Witnesses have a way of getting lost between counties. Not tonight. He studied her for a long second. Behind them, a county sedan rolled by slowly, then continued toward the highway. Eli lowered his voice. Ray didn't send me to make noise. He sent me to measure how much you care. Simone's eyes held his. Then take the measurement back. Eli nodded, turned, and walked through the rain. The truck started. The taillights slid across wet pavement and dissolved into the road's dark ribbon. Simone stood there a moment longer, listening until the engine was nothing but memory. Then she tucked the card into her pocket and rapped gently on the office door. Evelyn cracked it open, chin trembling. Did they leave? They came to ask about a ledger, Simone said. You don't have it, and you're not going to look for it. Evelyn swallowed. I don't keep books like that. I know. Evelyn's breath steadied by degrees. You going to tell the sergeant? I'm going to tell him the motel stays under watch. Simone paused. And I'm going to ask him to move you to your sister's for a week. Evelyn blinked. She lives over in Dublin. Good. Pack light. I'll send a deputy. Evelyn gave a grateful, exhausted nod. I never asked for any of this. I know, Simone said softly. That's why you won't carry it alone. Back at room 7, Simone set the card on the dresser and photographed it with her encrypted tablet. No logos, just a 10-digit number, handwritten cleanly, block letters beneath it. ELI. She ran a local offline cross-check, no direct matches in open directories. The numbers exchanged suggested a line registered across state under a service favored by short-term businesses. Her earpiece clicked. Sergeant Malcolm Price. You were right, he said. Pickup swung by the south camera. We didn't intercept, wanted to see their pattern. 2 men, Simone replied. One named Eli. Calm, trained, they're taking inventory. Of you? Price asked. Of the motel, of Miss Brooks, of who's awake. Simone lifted the card. And of who cares. Copy. I'll move Brooks to her sister's. Do it quietly, Simone said. And have a unit shuttle Deputy Alvarez off shift early. He's young enough to be targeted as a messenger. Price exhaled. On it. Anything else? Ray Langston is hearing reports. He'll push for something simple, fast, and deniable. Fires, smashed registers, robberies that look random. He won't risk a direct repeat of last night. Understood. And Malcolm, she added, they asked for a ledger. If there is one, it's not here. Then where? He asked. Simone looked at the ceiling, the old water stains that mapped decades of rain. With someone who felt invisible. By mid-morning, the fog burned off. Price's team rotated cars, so no unit sat longer than an hour. Simone walked the property line, tracing the edge where the motel grass met county brush. She found fresh footprints where the drainage ditch narrowed 2 sets, last night's scouts. Beyond that, a deer path split toward the highway. She followed 20 yards and stopped. In the mud lay a plastic sleeve, the kind gas stations use for maps. Inside, a paper scrap with 4 numbers and a street name, 19 Alder. The middle 2 digits had bled away in the rain. Simone slid the sleeve into a fresh bag, logged the find on her tablet, and sent the image to Price. A minute later, he called. We've got 3 Alder streets in county, numbers in the teens on 2 of them. They wanted someone else to find that, Simone said. Scouts don't drop a note at the motel unless it's part of the play. Either a false trail to pull our cars or a time-stamped test to see how fast we move. You want me to chase it? Price asked. Not yet. Put unmarked eyes 2 blocks off each Alder. If anyone shows up first, we learn more. Price paused. I can move Brooks in 20. Alvarez will drive her to Dublin. Tell him to take Route 30, Simone said. Not 58. Why? Because someone watched 58 last night. Price didn't argue. Copy. Alvarez pulled up out front, nervous but steady. He carried 2 bags to the office for Evelyn, cracked a small joke about her plants needing sun, and tried to act like this was an ordinary errand. Simone appreciated the effort. Fear can smell performance, but it respects simple kindness. Before they left, Simone pulled Alvarez aside. Don't stop in town. Fuel before you go or after you arrive. Keep the radio clear. Yes, ma'am. And if you notice a red sedan with a missing hubcap on the passenger side, call me. Someone circled twice this morning. Alvarez nodded, eyes widening. You saw them? I saw enough. He swallowed and squared his shoulders. I'll get her there. Simone watched as the sedan eased onto the road and disappeared toward the trees. She didn't exhale until the taillights were gone. Price joined her near the vending machine. We placed unmarked units near both Alder Streets. Nothing yet. It'll be later, Simone said. Dusk is the favorite hour for pretend errands. He studied her expression. You ever get tired of guessing what people will do wrong? It isn't guessing, Simone said. It's rhythm. He almost smiled. You and your rhythms. They're reliable, she said, and they don't lie. Price's phone buzzed. He stepped aside, listened, then returned. County judge signed a broader warrant. We can pull Riley's backup drives. Do it, Simone said. If there's a ledger, his office may have a photo or a copy made by someone trying to stay indispensable. You think Riley kept a souvenir? People who borrow power love receipts makes them feel in control. Late afternoon leaned toward gold. The highway hummed with weekend traffic, families and trucks moving between towns. Simone stood at the edge of the lot, eyes on the tree line, when a small sedan turned in and parked close to room 2. A man in a mechanic's jacket stepped out, wiped his hands, and looked around with the deliberate confusion of a stranger. Simone noted the clean boots. A true mechanic never keeps them that new. He walked to the office. The bell chimed. Simone followed at a distance, stopping at the threshold. The man leaned on the counter. Looking for a room, he said. Evelyn wasn't there. Price had posted a plainclothes officer at the desk. The officer checked the log and shook his head. We're full. Don't look full, the man said lightly. We're full. The man smiled and set his hands flat on the counter. His knuckles were nicked, but the pattern was wrong more from gym bars than engines. You the owner? Just covering the desk. Owner around? Not today. The man's eyes moved, measuring the camera in the corner, the stack of keys, the reflection in the window. He tapped the counter twice like a person leaving a tip that didn't exist. Tell her an old customer stopped by, he said. Tell her I asked after her husband. The plainclothes officer wrote nothing. And your name? The man smiled wider. She'll remember. He turned and walked out, not to his car, but to room 5's window, where he glanced inside quickly and then returned to the sedan. The car idled. He didn't leave. Simone stepped beside Price near his SUV. Not a room seeker, she said. Price nodded. We run the plates? Already on it, he said. Comes back to a rental in a different county. Then he expects to ditch it, Simone said. Simone approached the sedan's driver's side gently, keeping her hands visible. The man rolled the window down 2 inches. You forgot your receipt, she said. I like paying cash, he replied. It doesn't like you back. He chuckled. You're the Marine. She didn't confirm or deny. He leaned toward the gap. You made certain folks very busy last night. Lot of paperwork. Lot of people wondering why a traveler cares so much about a motel that isn't hers. It's mine until no one can shake it for money, Simone said. He considered that, then nodded, unexpectedly respectful. Fair, but you should know something. Ledger or no ledger, the route finds a new lane. You step on one hose, pressure builds somewhere else. Not if you find the pump, Simone answered. He grinned. You talk like my uncle. He used to say things like that before breakfast. Your uncle have a name? She asked. Most do, he said, and rolled the window up. The sedan pulled out slow, blended with traffic, and faded into distance. Price blew out a breath. They want us to chase riddles. They want us to waste motion, Simone said. so we won't notice who's moving slow. Who's that? Simone glanced at the road. The person carrying what matters. Her earpiece clicked. Captain Lydia Monroe. Update, Monroe said. Locals stable. Scouts measuring response. 2 contacts, one named Eli. Evelyn relocated discreetly. We found a partial address clue. Likely a test. Sheriff's drives will be imaged today. Monroe paused. Proceeding as planned. However, intel from Savannah suggests Ray Langston used a secondary ledger kept by an intermediary. Name we're seeing is Tina Carver. Simone's spine cooled. Tina was with the crew last night. We believe she travels, Monroe said. Small bag, uses bus depots, pays in cash, switches hair color. She keeps paper because she doesn't trust phones. If she's nervous, she hands the book to someone who owes her. And if she's bold, Simone said, she hands it to someone who owes Ray. Correct. Any known ties near our county? Simone asked. An old diner, Monroe said. Off Route 9, closed 3 years, reopened 6 months ago under new papers. We can't tie Ray on record, but suppliers overlap with his Savannah fronts. Send me the address, Simone said. It's en route. Captain, Simone added, tell me if Tina's been sloppy. Monroe's pause said enough. Twice in the last year. Both times she lingered to see who followed. Then she'll test us here, Simone said. Not by force, by bait. Stay inside county lines, Monroe cautioned. Keep Price looped. Always, Simone said, and the line clicked quiet. Dusk lowered like a held breath. The motel's yellow bulbs winked on. A bus rolled by on the highway, the kind that stops in towns you can miss if you blink. Simone stood near the road shoulder, hands in jacket pockets, as a woman in a hooded raincoat walked past with a small canvas bag. The woman didn't hurry. She looked at the ground, at the sky, at the sign that flickered Eve Mott. Then she turned into the lot. She walked by Simone without a glance, but her step shifted half a beat when Simone moved. That half beat was enough. Tina, Simone said softly. The woman stopped. Not a flinch, not a startle, just stillness. She lowered her hood. Short hair, dyed a warm brown, face plain enough to be invisible in a crowd, eyes that counted and kept counting. You're good, Tina said. Not many say my name the first time. You gave me last night, Simone replied, and you came back for today. Tina's smile carried curiosity more than challenge. I wanted to see the person who erased a sheriff before breakfast. Simone didn't smile back. You left something behind. Tina weighed the canvas bag. Maybe, or maybe I'm here to watch you look for it. You won't need to watch long, Simone said. Tina tilted her head. You know what a ledger does to people? It makes them think they're above water because they learned to swim, but they forget the tide. Where is it? Simone asked. Tina looked toward the office window. Somewhere it shouldn't be. That answer belongs on a coffee mug, Simone said. Tina laughed softly. All right, there's a spare key to room 3 behind the junction box. It's always been there. People like steady places. Simone didn't look toward the junction box. You put the ledger there? I put a thing there, Tina said. Depends what you call a ledger. You're playing 2 sides, Simone said. Ray thinks you'll check the motel to test our patience. You're testing his. Tina's eyes held a quiet, tired truth. Everyone gets tested. Who fails first? Simone asked. The one who believes fear is faster than grace, Tina said. But you're not that kind. A county cruiser turned onto the road a block away. Tina glanced, then back to Simone. Tell your sergeant the diner on Route 9 makes a good peach pie on Thursdays, Tina said. Tell him to order 2, 1 for the table, 1 for whoever shows up late. The late one's the collector. Name? He uses many, Tina said. But he likes to be called Mr. Cole when he wants to feel taller. Is he Ray? Simone asked. No, Tina said. He's the voice Ray uses when he hurts his own throat. Will you testify? Simone asked. Tina's gaze slipped toward the trees, to the dark line where highway met county woods. I'll live. Some days that's a form of testimony. Simone let the quiet hold. Then she said, Room 3? Behind the box? Tina said. But if you open the door, don't flick the light. Just look at the second floorboard near the window. People think floorboards are forever. They're not. Simone nodded once. You walking out of here, Tina? I'm always walking, Tina said. Never far. Just enough to make people wonder if I left. Her hood came up. Her canvas bag swung against her leg. She passed the office and stepped onto the road with the calm pace of someone running late to nothing at all. Price joined Simone a minute later, breath clouding in the cool air. Who was she? Someone who doesn't trust phones, Simone said, and someone who just gave us the next door. We search room 3? We verify room 3, Simone corrected. Cameras on the corridor, 2 officers on the lot. We open slow. They did. No lights. The plainclothes officer eased the door. Simone went to the window and knelt. Second board from the left had a fine crack in the varnish. She lifted it with a thin blade and slid out a wrapped package the size of a paperback. The weight told its own story. She carried it to the dresser, peeled the tape, and unfolded oilcloth around a notebook bound in canvas. No title. Inside, neatly lettered columns, dates, initials, routes, amounts. A set of pages marked with a tiny star at the top, probably Tina's system for priority. Price let out a low whistle. That's our pump. Simone didn't answer. She flipped to the back, where a last entry had been written with a different pen. The handwriting was careful, almost rehearsed. Alder, 1910. Your false trail just became a real address, Price said. Or the other way around, Simone said. Either way, someone is waiting to see who shows up. Price straightened. We move tonight? Not with marked cars, Simone said. We go light. One unmarked near 1910 Alder, one on the parallel street. And we leave a unit here in case our generous friend decides she regrets her charity. Price nodded and signaled his team. As the officers moved, Simone glanced out at the highway. She pictured the chain behind all this. The small store owner asked to donate. The loader who swapped serial numbers because it was easier than saying no. The clerk who learned to count with fear sitting at the table. And then she pictured the ledger again, lines and initials stacked like bricks. Paper could tell truths that people would not. Her earpiece clicked. Unit 4 posted near Alder, a voice said. No movement. Hold, Simone said. 10 minutes. She turned the last page of the book and saw one more note written sideways in the margin, almost like the author had run out of space. Mr. Cole collects at closing. Leaves by the river. Price caught her eye. The diner. And the river, Simone said. That's your net. Price's phone buzzed. He glanced down, then up. Judge-approved wire on the diner line. We can record tonight. Simone closed the ledger. Then we're done guessing. Price studied her. You'll stay on the motel? I'll stay where fear looks for the easiest door, Simone said. He nodded once. I'll see you at dawn. He left with the ledger sealed in a bag, 2 officers on either side, an unmarked car drifting into the night toward Alder. Simone returned to the walkway outside room 7 and stood with the rain ticking on the metal roof. The highway sang its late-day song. Somewhere down Route 9, a diner's lights would be warming plates, and a man who liked to be tall would check his watch before deciding who mattered in his own small kingdom. Simone watched the road and let the quiet set. The motel had felt like a trap 2 nights ago. Now it felt like a witness. Some places break, some places learn to speak. Her phone vibrated once. A text from Monroe. Good work. Hold position. Simone slid the phone away. A cat darted from under a car, startled by wind. A family wagon passed on the highway, children's voices faint and happy through an open window. The ordinary world kept time with its own clock, even while another clock measured pressure and names and routes. She breathed in the cool air and let the rhythm steady her. The confrontation had been small by the world's standards, 2 watchers in the rain, a quiet conversation by a door, a notebook under a floorboard. But small things decide the course of larger tides. She lifted her eyes to the road again. Night would bring closing time at a diner, and closing time would bring Mr. Cole. The next morning broke sharp and gray. A chill hung over the county like a warning no one could quite name. Simone Grant stood outside the Evergreen Motel, the damp breeze tugging at the hem of her jacket, the neon sign flickering behind her like a tired heartbeat. The motel had turned quiet again, unnaturally so. The guests from the night before had checked out early, citing family emergencies or bad weather. Simone knew better. Word had traveled, people had seen the cruisers, the unmarked cars, the men in suits. And in small towns, silence moved faster than sound. Sergeant Malcolm Price pulled up beside her in a gray SUV, engine humming low. He stepped out, a folder under his arm, and handed her a paper cup. "Still drink it black?" he asked. Simone nodded, taking it. "Still terrible, I bet." He cracked a tired grin. "That's government coffee for you." They stood there a moment, watching a semi roll by on the distant highway. The early fog was lifting, revealing more of the motel's worn siding, decades of stories painted over and forgotten. Price opened the folder. Inside were photos from overnight surveillance, grainy stills of the Route 9 diner, a squat silver building sitting between a gas station and a used car lot. "Your friend Tina was right," he said. "This place reopened 6 months ago. Owner of record is a shell company registered to a Cole Logistics, the same alias that popped up in Riley's files." Simone scanned the photo. "Mr. Cole," she said quietly. "The man who likes to feel taller." Price nodded. "We've got his face now. Name's Leonard Cole, but that's not what people call him. He's Ray Langston's negotiator, the one who smooths things out when money or silence gets loud." Simone sipped her coffee, her mind moving in measured gears. "So Ray hides behind a businessman with manners." "Exactly, and according to our intel, Cole's due at the diner this evening. Regular schedule every Thursday at 8. Orders coffee, pie, collects envelopes, leaves before closing." "Routine," Simone murmured. "They always think routine makes them invisible." Price looked at her carefully. "We can handle the diner, Simone. You've already done more than enough here." She met his gaze. "You think they're done with this motel? With Evelyn? They tested it twice. The third time won't be a test." Price sighed. "You're saying you'll stay here as bait. I'm saying I'll finish what I started." He didn't argue. He knew better. By late afternoon, the sky had deepened to the color of pewter. The motel lights came on early, buzzing faintly. 2 unmarked cars rotated every hour on the far end of the lot, disguised as travelers checking in. Simone paced the walkway, phone pressed to her ear. "Captain Monroe," she said quietly when the line clicked. "Report." "Tina Carver resurfaced last night. She's playing both sides, but she pointed us to a ledger that confirmed the Langston Network's routes. Price has it secured. Cole's scheduled at the diner tonight." "And your position?" "Still at the motel. Scouts have pulled back, but I can feel them watching from the tree line. They're planning something cleaner this time, no direct contact." Monroe's tone was calm, but clipped. "Meaning sabotage or framing?" "Could be either," Simone said. "Riley's arrest spooked them. They'll want to prove they can still control the board." A brief silence. Then Monroe said, "Stay alert. If they try to stage another setup, document everything. We'll cross-link evidence with Cole's movements." "Copy that," Simone said. "And Captain?" "Yes?" "Tell the base to keep this quiet. I don't want the locals panicking." "They won't hear a thing," Monroe said, then ended the call. Simone slipped the phone into her pocket. The air was thick with that stillness that comes before trouble, not loud, not fast, but certain. She looked across the lot to room 3 where the floorboard had yielded the ledger. The lock had been changed this morning, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that someone would come looking for what wasn't there anymore. Inside the office, Deputy Ricky Alvarez sat at the front desk, pretending to scroll through a sports app. His patrol cap was tilted too straight, a rookie tell Simone had noticed from the start. She stepped in quietly. "How's our little innkeeper shift?" she asked. Alvarez glanced up, startled, then relaxed. "Quiet. Too quiet, maybe." "That's how trouble starts," Simone said lightly. He tried to smile, but his eyes betrayed fatigue. "They've been calling the desk phone every hour, unknown numbers. When I pick up, it's silence." "You think it's them?" "Yes," Simone said simply. "They're testing how nervous you are." "Well, it's working," he admitted. Simone looked at him, young, sincere, trying hard not to show the cracks. She'd met a dozen like him in her early years. Good hearts that hadn't yet learned how to armor themselves. "Listen to me, Alvarez," she said evenly. "If anything feels off, anything at all, you call me or Sergeant Price. Don't try to handle it. Don't open doors. Don't chase sounds." He nodded quickly. "Understood." "Good," she said, turning toward the door, then paused. "And unplug that desk phone. If they want to talk, they'll find another way." He grinned faintly. "Yes, ma'am." At 7:45 p.m., Price radioed in from the diner. "Cole just arrived," he said. "Black sedan, same one Tina described. He's inside now, talking to the waitress. Looks calm." Simone stood near room 7's window, watching the highway lights in the distance. "You have sound?" "Audio's patchy, but we caught this much. He's expecting a delivery that didn't arrive. Something about a book missing pages." Simone's voice tightened. "That's the ledger." "Probably. He told his contact he'd check on the source personally if it didn't turn up by morning." Simone exhaled slowly. "So he'll come here?" "Exactly. Then we'll be ready." Price's tone turned wary. "Simone, I don't like the idea of you being the welcoming committee." "You don't have to like it," she said. "Just be close enough when I call." He chuckled softly, though there was no humor in it. "You never did take orders well." "Depends who's giving them," she replied, then ended the call. Night fell heavy and quiet. The motel's old sign buzzed in the mist, its glow painting the puddles amber. Simone sat on the edge of the bed, her duffel open beside her. She checked her sidearm regulation issue, but holstered. This wasn't a combat mission. She slipped on her wristband tracker and adjusted the earpiece linked to Price's frequency. Then she waited. At 9:17, headlights appeared, one pair, steady, approaching from the south. The car slowed near the lot entrance. Simone's pulse stayed measured, every muscle loose but alert. The sedan stopped directly in front of the office. Through the blinds, she saw him, Leonard Cole. Late 40s, expensive coat, the sort of man who wore confidence like a uniform. He stepped out slowly, adjusted his tie, and scanned the lot with eyes that had seen too much and learned too little. Alvarez, sitting inside the office, straightened nervously. Simone spoke into her earpiece. "Target visual confirmed. One subject on foot." Price's voice crackled through. "Copy that. We're 4 minutes out." Cole entered the office. Simone could hear faint, muffled words through the wall. "Evening," Alvarez said politely. "Evening," Cole replied, his tone smooth, almost friendly. "You must be the night clerk. Quiet place you've got here." "Usually," Alvarez said. "You checking in?" "Not exactly," Cole said. "I'm looking for a woman who stayed here a few nights ago. Black Jeep, military posture, travels alone. Ring any bells?" Alvarez hesitated just a second too long. Cole smiled faintly. "That's a yes." Simone moved toward the door, silent, deliberate. "I don't know if she's still here," Alvarez said carefully. "Oh, she's here," Cole said. "I can feel it. Marines have a presence. You can't fake that." Simone opened the office door quietly, her voice calm. "You could have called ahead, Mr. Cole." Cole turned slowly, and his smile widened, polite, almost admiring. "Ms. Grant," he said, "you're a difficult woman to find." "I wasn't hiding." "That's what worries me." He took a step forward. Alvarez tensed, hand on his radio. Cole waved it off. "Relax, deputy. I'm not here to cause a scene. I came to make a proposal." Simone didn't blink. "Go on." Cole clasped his hands behind his back. "You've disrupted a very delicate arrangement. Sheriff Riley, for all his flaws, maintained balance. You've tilted the board, and now people are uneasy." "Uneasy people make mistakes," Simone said evenly. "Yes," Cole agreed. "That's why I'm offering you a way to prevent them." Price's voice crackled faintly in her earpiece, whispering, "Keep him talking." Simone folded her arms. "You think I'm interested in deals?" Cole chuckled softly. "I think you're practical. You care about order. So do we. Let the county clean itself. Step aside and this goes away quietly. The motel returns to normal. Your friends keep their jobs. No one gets hurt." "You mean no one important," Simone said. Cole's expression didn't change. "We both know justice isn't about importance. It's about convenience." Simone's patience thinned. You came here to sell a lie. I'm not buying. Then you leave me few options, Cole said, voice lowering. At that moment, Simone noticed a faint vibration underfoot, almost imperceptible. She followed it to the front wall. Behind the vending machine outside, a small light flickered red. A timed detonator. Get down, she shouted, grabbing Alvarez by the arm. They dove behind the counter as an explosion ripped through the outer wall, shattering glass and sending shards across the office. The blast wasn't strong enough to kill, just to send a message. Dust filled the air as the fire alarm shrieked. Cole staggered back, shielding his face. Simone rose from behind the counter, coughing through the smoke, drawing her sidearm. "That's your idea of quiet?" she demanded. Cole wiped soot from his coat, his composure breaking for the first time. "You think I planned that?" "Didn't need to," Simone said. "You just had to stand here long enough to distract me." Price's voice cut through her earpiece. "Simone, we heard the blast back up en route." "Negative," Simone barked. "He's still here." Cole straightened, regaining his mask. "You're fast," he said, breathing hard. "But not fast enough to outrun everyone who works for me. We'll see about that." He took a step backward toward the shattered doorway, hands raised slightly. "Don't make this messy, Marine. You and I could be useful to each other." "Useful," Simone repeated. "That's what you called Riley before you burned him too, isn't it?" Cole's smile faltered. "You don't understand how far this goes." "Try me. Ray doesn't need counties or sheriffs. He's building corridors, trade routes across states. And when he's done, your badge won't mean anything." Simone's eyes were sharp as steel. "Neither will his." He studied her for a long second, then laughed softly. "You really think you can stop him?" "No," Simone said quietly. "I already started." Before he could answer, red and blue lights flashed outside. Price's SUV skidded into the lot, agents pouring out. Cole glanced toward the sound, his jaw tightening. "Guess the meeting's over," he muttered. He lunged toward the doorway, but Simone was faster. She caught his arm, twisted it behind his back, and pinned him against the frame. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, obstruction, and aiding a corrupt official," she said firmly. Cole hissed through his teeth. "You think jail means anything to people like me?" Simone leaned close enough for him to hear the quiet certainty in her voice. "It does when the walls start talking." Price rushed in, coughing through the dust. "You all right?" Simone nodded, keeping her grip tight. "He brought fireworks." Price looked at Cole. "Guess the party's over," Cole sneered. "You're celebrating too early. You have no idea what's coming." Price hauled him toward the SUV, reading him his rights as the agent secured the scene. Simone stood amid the wreckage papers scattered, smoke curling through broken glass, and finally exhaled. The motel office, once a quiet relic of small-town America, had just become the front line of something bigger. The Langston network wasn't crumbling, it was adapting, and Simone knew the explosion wasn't meant to destroy her. It was meant to flush her out. She turned toward the empty road, the night wind cutting through the smoke. Somewhere out there, Ray Langston had just received his message. She was still alive. And she wasn't done yet. Dawn came pale and bruised over the county, its light stretching across the wrecked front office of the Evergreen Motel. The smell of scorched plaster still hung in the air. Yellow tape fluttered in the breeze like nervous hands trying to hold back the morning. Simone Grant stood a few yards away, arms folded, watching technicians sweep the rubble. Her clothes were streaked with soot, her hair tied back, her eyes sharp but heavy with fatigue. She hadn't slept, not since the blast. Sergeant Malcolm Price walked up beside her, coffee in one hand, clipboard in the other. "You sure you're all right?" he asked. "I've been worse," Simone said. "Once spent 3 days in a desert with half a canteen. This is just Georgia humidity and bad wiring." Price smiled faintly, but the humor faded fast. "County Fire Marshal's report's already getting messy. Says the explosion came from an old gas leak." Simone glanced at him. "That's the story Cole's people want, isn't it?" He nodded. "Whole department's repeating it like scripture. Word is spreading that you overreacted, pulled a weapon first, escalated everything. So I'm the problem now. According to the sheriff's union rep, yes." Simone sighed, slow and measured. They don't want justice. They want quiet. Price took a sip of coffee. Cole's lawyer's already filing for bail. Federal holdings crowded, and the judge owes a few favors to folks we'd rather not name. Simone's gaze hardened. You let him out, he vanishes. That's what I told them. But half the county's scared to blink wrong right now. Ray Langston's got his fingers in every courthouse between here and Savannah. A gust of wind lifted ash from the broken doorway. Simone watched it scatter. Then we build pressure until someone higher up hears the noise. Easier said than done, Price muttered. You're still technically an outside operative. They could shut you out at any moment. Then they'll have to find me first, Simone said quietly. Inside the charred office, Deputy Ricky Alvarez was photographing debris when a glint caught his eye. Beneath a fallen ceiling tile lay a sliver of metal, thin, rectangular, half-melted. He crouched, brushed the soot away, and frowned. A memory chip. He slid it into a small evidence bag and walked towards Simone. Found this near the blast center, he said. She took it, turning it over in her gloved hand. The surface was scorched but intact. This isn't from a detonator. It's storage. Think it belonged to Cole? Maybe. Or whoever built the distraction for him. Price joined them, curiosity rising. We can send it to forensics, but turnaround's a week. Simone looked toward her Jeep. I have a faster way. 10 minutes later, she sat inside the vehicle with her encrypted tablet connected to a field reader. The chip's data loaded slowly, half corrupt, half alive. Lines of text scrolled across the screen. Transaction logs, phone pings, short internal messages. Most were meaningless codes until one folder name flashed clear. Alder, 1910, final drop. Price leaned through the open door. That's the address from the ledger. Simone nodded. And here's the proof it wasn't just an address. It's a schedule. She scrolled again. The last timestamp read Friday, 22:30. Tonight, she murmured. Price rubbed his jaw. We're already stretched thin watching the diner. Then shift priorities, Simone said. Cole was a decoy. The real handoff happens on Alder. If we miss that, everything burns. Price hesitated. You think Ray himself will show? No, she said. But whoever does will be close enough to him to pull the thread. By noon, the motel had filled with uniforms, state investigators, and half-curious locals trying to peek past the tape. Reporters hovered by the fence, microphones like vultures. Simone ignored them, focusing on logistics. Evelyn Brooks called from her sister's house 2 counties over. I saw the news, she said, voice trembling. They're saying gas leak. Was that true? No, ma'am, Simone said gently. Someone wanted to frighten us. That's all. Evelyn sighed. You stopping them, right? We're working on it, Simone replied. Just stay where you are. When Simone hung up, Price approached again, face tight. County DA's office wants a statement. They're implying the explosion compromised evidence. They're questioning your presence at the motel. Simone raised an eyebrow. Compromised evidence? There wasn't any left to compromise. Politics, Price said. They're protecting their reputations, not the case. Simone folded her arms. Then we take it federal. Price blinked. That's a bold move. Captain Monroe won't like it, Simone said. But she'll understand. Langston's network isn't a county operation anymore, it's interstate. At 3 p.m., Simone met Price in a makeshift command trailer parked near the lot. Monroe's face filled the screen of a secure laptop. Report, Monroe said briskly. Simone outlined the morning's findings, the chip, the Alder 1910 entry, the timing. Monroe listened, expression unreadable. If you're right, tonight's drop could expose the logistics ring. But if you're wrong, we'll be pulling resources from every ongoing sting south of Richmond. I'm not wrong, Simone said simply. Monroe looked at Price. You trust her, Red? With my life, Price said. Monroe exhaled. All right, you'll have 2 federal vehicles for support and 1 surveillance drone. Keep it low profile. We can't spook them before contact. Simone nodded. Understood. And Grant, Monroe added, her tone softening a fraction. After this, you stand down. I mean it. Simone almost smiled. You've been saying that for 3 years, Captain. Monroe's lips twitched. Then maybe the 4th time's charm. The call ended. Price looked at Simone. You ever listen? Only when silence is louder, she said. By sunset, the team was in motion. The air carried the smell of pine and diesel from passing trucks. The Alder Street area lay on the outskirts of a small industrial park storage units, a shuttered hardware store, and an old feed warehouse with rusted tin siding. Address 1910 belonged to a forgotten building half swallowed by kudzu. Simone studied it through binoculars from a side road. A single light glowed inside, weak and yellow. No movement yet. Price's voice came through her earpiece. Our drone shows 2 heat signatures, back room, probably prepping. Any vehicles? Nothing since a delivery van about an hour ago. Mark it. Simone shifted position, crouching behind a fence post, raincoat blending with the dusk. She could hear the hum of cicadas fading as night crept in. At 22:15, a black SUV rolled slowly down Alder and stopped beside the warehouse. Its headlights clicked off. 3 men stepped out, one heavy set with a limp, one lean and quick, the third carrying a briefcase. Price whispered, "Third one matches photos of Ray Langston." Simone's breath steadied. "Are you sure?" "Facial match is 86%. She felt the world narrow to pulse and rhythm. Wait for confirmation. No move until the exchange. Through the window, a figure approached the men from inside. She wore a gray hoodie, hood up, shoulders small. Tina Carver. Simone's chest tightened. "Tina's there," Price cursed softly. "You think she brought the ledger copy?" "No," Simone said. "She brought bait." Inside the warehouse, Tina set the briefcase on a table, opened it, and stepped back. The heavy-set man counted stacks of bills. The lean one typed into a tablet. Tina didn't move. Her eyes flicked once toward the window, the slightest motion. But Simone caught it. A signal. Price's voice crackled. "Do we move?" "Not yet," Simone whispered. "Let her finish it." A minute passed. Then the lean man closed the tablet and nodded to Ray. Ray gestured to Tina. "You're late." His muffled voice carried faintly through Simone's mic feed. "Roads were bad," Tina said. "You switched sides again." "Not today." He studied her. "Then why no book?" "I told you it burned." "Convenient." Simone could feel the tension rising like heat. Then Tina's voice dropped lower. "You should ask your man Cole about that." Ray frowned. "Cole's in custody." "Exactly," Tina said. Ray's hand twitched. "You set me up." "No," she said softly. "He did." That was the cue. Simone spoke fast. "All units move." Lights burst from the darkness, floods, sirens, shouts. Agents swarmed the warehouse, shouting orders. The men scrambled, Ray ducking behind the table. Tina dropped to the floor as chaos erupted. Within seconds, the agents had the suspects on the ground, weapons seized, the briefcase secure. Price approached the doorway, gun drawn but steady. Simone followed, eyes scanning every corner. Ray Langston lay face down, wrists bound. Even pinned to concrete, he managed a crooked smile. "Marine," he said, "I wondered when you'd stop hiding behind other people's badges." Simone knelt beside him. "You've been hiding behind everyone else's fear. Time someone turned the lights on." Ray chuckled dryly. "You think this ends with me?" "It starts with you," Simone said. As agents hauled him up, he leaned close enough for her to hear. "Every network needs pressure valves. Take me. Another opens. You'll spend your life chasing ghosts." "Good," she said. "I work well with ghosts." They pulled him away. Tina sat near the wall, wrists zip-tied, eyes distant. Simone crouched beside her. "You knew it would end like this." Tina gave a tired smile. "Maybe. I just wanted to see if someone would finally listen." Simone nodded slowly. "I did." "That ledger, you still have it?" "Safe and sealed." "Then don't lose it," Tina whispered. "People's lives are written in that book." Back at the motel, long after midnight, Simone stood beneath the broken sign. The air was cool, quiet. Price approached, jacket over his arm, exhaustion plain. "Feds are loading everything for transport," he said. "Ray's facing 30 counts minimum. Cole's transfers being expedited." Simone nodded. "Good. Press wants a statement. Tell them the county's safer tonight." Price smirked. "You never did like microphones. They echo too much," she said. He looked at her a long moment. "You know this isn't really over." "I know," Simone said, but it's a start." They stood there in the faint glow of emergency lights until the last van rolled away. The motel looked battered but stubborn, half wreck, half survivor. Simone glanced at the taped doorway and thought of Evelyn, of Alvarez, of Tina's weary eyes. Price broke the silence. "Captain Monroe wants you debriefed in D.C. by Monday." "I'll be there," Simone said. "You sure you don't want to break first?" Simone looked toward the horizon, where the first edge of dawn pressed against the dark. "Breaks are for people finished with their work." Price nodded. "Then I'll see you on the next one." He left her there with the quiet and the wind. Simone touched the cracked neon casing above her. It buzzed faintly under her fingertips, stubbornly alive despite everything. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Justice was rarely clean. It came in fragments, shattered glass, half-truths, burnt paper, people trying to stand after the smoke cleared. She picked up her bag, straightened her shoulders, and started toward her Jeep. The road waited long, empty, and honest. For now, that was enough. Sunday morning carried a hush over the county, the kind that lingers after long nights and loud truths. The motel's broken office sat under plastic sheeting, the neon sign still stuttering against the gray. A handwritten note taped to the window read, "Closed for repairs," in Evelyn Brooks's careful script. Simone Grant stood by her Jeep, a small duffel at her feet. She was supposed to leave for D.C. that afternoon. Debrief, reports, next marching orders. But the road out had a way of pulling memories up from places she didn't visit often. This case hadn't started at a motel. Not for her. It started years earlier in heat and dust and metal, far from these pine trees and county roads. Price approached with 2 cups of coffee and an envelope tucked inside his jacket. "Monroe's expecting you by 9 tomorrow," he said. "I can have a driver run you up to the interstate." "I'll drive," Simone replied, taking a cup. "I think better when the road doesn't talk back." He studied her expression. "You're already replaying it, aren't you? The how and the why." "Every case teaches a rhythm," she said. "This one sounds like an old song." Price nodded. "Then give me the chorus." Simone looked toward the highway, where a church bell carried on the wind from a small brick building set back among oaks. Families filed inside. Sunday shirts, old hymnals, voices ready to rise. She listened to the fading chime and chose her words with the care she used for maps. "It started before my first stripe," she said, "back when I still thought order and rules were the same thing." Years earlier, Paris Island had burned under a summer sun that made everything feel sharper and louder. That was where Simone learned that calm wasn't a gift, but a muscle. She built it mile by mile, drill by drill, letter by letter on a rack of gear that had to be perfect every time. She wasn't the fastest runner or the strongest lifter, but she could hold focus while others looked away. It made leaders notice. After training, she rotated through logistics and security details, first at stateside bases, then farther out. She developed a habit: walk a perimeter twice, then stand still and listen. She found loose fence ties and forgotten badges not because she was lucky, but because the world tells on itself if you give it the quiet to speak. Her first real test came after a hurricane chewed through a coastal city on the Gulf. Simone's unit was tasked with supply oversight fuel, generators, bottled water, medical kits. The work was heavy and honest. She liked that. But even in disaster, some people kept their hands in the same old pockets. 2 pallets of generators vanished from a staging yard one night, followed by 6 cases of antibiotics the next. The paperwork looked clean. The gate logs looked cleaner. She walked the line in the morning, counted tire ruts, and wrote down a set of plate numbers that didn't fit the convoy list. A driver swore he'd seen the same truck at a warehouse off a county road, tucked behind a pawn shop and a payday office. When Simone got there with her team, the warehouse door hung open like a mouth caught in a lie. The space was empty except for a coffee cup still warm on a makeshift desk and a hand-drawn map of back roads that skirted every checkpoint. At the bottom of that map was a name: Cole Logistics. She took a picture. She didn't forget. The official report said unknown contractors and miscommunication. She learned something that day, how a neat summary can be the first layer of an old rot. She kept the photo anyway. Later, another deployment sent her to a desert base where wind moved sand like water and days stacked on each other in straight lines. Her duty shift drifted into odd hours, the kind that blur clocks. One night, a local truck approached the outer fence and cut lights just shy of a posted sign. The driver waved a paper and pointed to a name on the manifest that didn't belong. Raymond L., listed as a subcontracted liaison. The name didn't match any base sheets. Simone used the mirror under the chassis and counted boxes stacked wider than the cargo cage. She found 2 empties filled with scrap, 8 full of electronics, and 1 with a false bottom. Inside the false bottom sat a shoebox with a phone, 3 hard drives wrapped in plastic, and a list of U.S. zip codes. The driver shrugged and said he only followed instructions. She logged it, turned it in, wrote it clean. Later, in a briefing room that smelled of stale air and burned coffee, an officer thanked her for attention to detail and took the shoebox away. No follow-up, no questions. That file went into a drawer somewhere between handled and forgotten. Months later, she heard the name again, softened and local. Ray Langston, a businessman tied to a contractor installing fences around a supply depot in Savannah. The paperwork said fence posts and badge readers. The rumor mill said side deals and paid silence. Simone kept her calm and another copy of the manifest, this time in her notebook. She didn't know why until the pattern returned at the Evergreen Motel like a picture she'd seen once when she was too far away to touch it. Between rotations, Simone went home to Columbia, South Carolina. A tidy row house with a creaky porch, a mother who kept notes clipped to the fridge, a father who fell asleep in his chair listening to baseball on the radio. They never asked for details. They asked if she was eating enough and whether her boots needed replacing. Her father, Arthur Grant, drove a city bus for 30 years. He knew every corner of town and which streets told the truth by the way they kept their sidewalks. "Watch the roots," he told her when she joined the Corps. Roots aren't just lines, they're promises. When someone breaks a root, they usually break something else. Her mother Irene taught 4th grade. She lived by lists and felt best when everyone had what they needed. She didn't understand danger the way Simone did. She understood people. "Keep your voice," she'd say when Simone grew quiet. "Be calm, but don't let them take your voice." Simone lost her father 2 winters before the Motel case on a gray day when the bus ran late and the house felt too heavy. She missed his small comments, most the ones about potholes and corner stores and the way a route can make a city honest if it's allowed to. After the funeral, she took a long walk past his old stops and thought about lines that hold communities together even when maps get redrawn without permission. Her first encounter with Captain Lydia Monroe came after a training exercise that turned into a real emergency. A convoy had rolled over a cattle guard and the last truck skidded and hit a culvert. No catastrophic injuries, but the radio chatter flooded and 3 different officers tried to run command at once. Simone found the nearest hill, counted vehicles, and spoke only the information no one else had. She located the missing medic and directed the generator truck to a safer road out. Monroe watched the whole thing from a distance and drew 1 sentence on a note card. "Keeps the picture steady when the glass breaks." When Monroe pulled Simone into a joint tasking group a year later, it surprised no one. The unit handled edge cases, gray lines between local crime and federal threshold, places where paperwork didn't know which office to sit in. Monroe wanted people who didn't flinch when answers took longer than patience. "How are you with quiet assignments?" Monroe asked, handing Simone a thin file-stamped logistics diversion coastal corridor. "I grew up in quiet," Simone said. "Not scared of it." "Good," Monroe replied, "because quiet tells the truth if you let it." Inside the file were references to front companies, including a familiar name, Coal Logistics, now disguised under 2 layers of shell registrations. A sticky note in the back had a scratched list of counties, one circled twice. The last line read, "Savannah gate work plus backroad staging. Watch for Ray." Simone closed the folder and packed a bag. 2 summers before the Evergreen Motel, she followed a series of fuel card anomalies through counties that shared a coastline and a habit. A truck would fill up twice in one shift, then a third time on the same number, but at a station miles out of route. Cameras showed different drivers wearing the same hat and jacket. The cashier swore the signature matched. When Simone charted it on a map, the dots lined up like a path someone drew in the dark, learning the turns by touch. She sat outside a storage yard one night and watched a man tape a note to a chain-link gate. After he left, she read the note. It said only, "Thursday 8th, Mr. Cole." The handwriting matched the map from the hurricane warehouse. She called Monroe and asked for patience. "If I pull this early," Simone said, "we catch one driver. If I wait, we learn the road." Monroe gave her a week, but there was a kitchen fire on a base housing row and 3 promising leads were pulled to help with relief, Simone included. When she returned, the gate was bare, the trucks had new plates, and the fuel card pattern went clean for 6 months. She memorized that failure. It taught her to hold still longer than anyone wants you to. On a cold spring morning the year before the motel, Simone visited her father's bus depot and stood where his bus used to park. An older driver named Mr. Lowell shuffled by, recognized her, and stopped to talk. He told her about route changes that pushed stops farther from the neighborhoods that needed them, about a new vendor cleaning the floors who always finished early and left a mint on the office counter, about a whisper in the break room. Cole Logistics got the floor contract on a low bid. "Never seen a floor that clean," Mr. Lowell said, frowning, "with a bid that cheap." Simone drove to the contractor's office and found a room with 2 desks and 4 chairs and a printer that didn't work. A woman at the front gave her a brochure printed on heavy stock that felt more real than anything in the room. Simone thanked her and left, then sat in her car and listened to trucks a street away. She could hear the beeps of a loading dock and the clatter of pallets. The company sign at that dock said Savannah Storage Partners, but the forklift operator had a safety vest with Cole printed on the back in faded letters. She didn't move that day. She changed the way she watched. The connection to Ray Langston sharpened when a small hardware store owner in Glynn County called Monroe's tip line to report a man who offered to carry insurance on late shipments. The owner described a negotiator with neat hair and neat shoes. He pushed a contract across the counter and tapped one clause with a precise finger. Routing flexibility authorized. No one signed. 2 weeks later, the owner's delivery truck was pulled over for a minor taillight issue, and inside a crate of screws, the officer found a jade statue that didn't belong to any invoice. The owner swore he'd never seen it. He lost his license for 6 months anyway. People learned to sign. When Simone interviewed him after the suspension lifted, he pointed at a name on the rejected contract. It read Leonard Cole. He didn't know Ray. Few did. That was the point. Back in the present, Simone sat in the makeshift command trailer with Price and spread an old map across the table. She drew 3 lines with a pen, one from the Savannah depot, one from the county where the diners sat, one from a cluster of storage yards along the river. The lines met at a triangle with the Evergreen Motel sitting inside it like a small dot that suddenly made too much sense. "First time I saw Cole's name was hurricane season," she said. "The routes that cut around checkpoints, he refined those into business. Ray turned them into corridors." Price studied the pen lines. "And Riley was the county shield." "Shields break when someone leans long enough," Simone said. "But shields only exist because someone is paying to hold them up." Price slid the envelope from his jacket and opened it. Inside were 2 photos printed in grayscale. He laid the first down, Ray at a marina, talking to a man with a jacket patched at the elbow. The second, Leonard Cole in a lobby, shaking hands with a county official Simone recognized from a 5-second soundbite on local news. "Where'd you get these?" she asked. "Anonymous drop at the station after last night," Price said. "No return info, just a sticky note. Roots end where favors begin. Tina? Maybe. Or someone else who decided a line had to be drawn somewhere. Simone traced the edge of the marina photo. The patched elbow felt like the most honest thing in the frame. Roots end where favors begin, she repeated. Sounds like something my father would have said if he'd known this side of the road. Price sat back. Tell me more about him. Bus driver, Simone said. Knew the city better than the maps did. He taught me to listen to what a road doesn't say. He said if you stay on a route long enough, you'll learn where the corners are honest and where they just look neat. Price smiled. He would have liked what you did here. He would have asked why it took so long, Simone said, and she meant it as a compliment. He never settled for almost. Her memory reached farther back to a summer when she was 12 and her father let her sit up front on the early route when schedules ran light. He pointed out a corner store that kept milk behind the counter for elders who walked slowly and a park bench the city kept forgetting to fix. He waved to a mechanic who used to play high school ball and never left town. He slowed near a boarded-up bakery where, he said, the best sweet rolls in the county were made before the owner's son moved away. Maps don't show kindness, he told her, but you'll find it if you watch the same corner long enough. That line stayed with her through every place that felt temporary. It was why she spoke gently to Evelyn, why she noticed the way Alvarez straightened his cap when he was scared, why she kept her voice steady with Tina even when every lesson told her to distrust people who carried two truths in the same pocket. You don't always win by being harder. Sometimes you win by staying honest longer than fear does. The Langston case taught Simone a different lesson too. Betrayal can be quiet. It doesn't always shout from podiums or wear expensive shoes. Sometimes betrayal is a shrug in a crowded room when someone says that's just how it is and everyone decides not to look past the first page. Sheriff Riley had that shrug. He thought of himself as practical. He called deals keeping the peace and called pressure the cost of doing business. Simone had seen his type in other uniforms, people who confuse their comfort with the county's health. She didn't hate him. She refused to give him that much space. She simply removed his hand from the lever and let the machine stop because it had no weight left to run. By midday, Simone finished her written summary for Monroe and closed her notebook. Price leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You really heading out today? I'll stay through the evening, she said. I want to check one more place before I go. Where? The diner, not for pie, for a question. They drove the two-lane road without sirens or hurry. The Route 9. Diner looked ordinary again. Sunday crowd, families, a couple of truckers, the hiss of griddle. The waitress who had taken Cole's order 2 nights earlier refilled coffee at a window booth and gave Simone a nod that said she knew more than she would say in public. Price took a stool at the counter and pretended to study the menu. Simone slid into a corner seat and waited. When the rush thinned, the owner came by with a towel over his shoulder. Mid-50s, tired eyes that watched his staff the way a foreman watches a job site. You at the county? He asked. Visiting, Simone said. You reopened 6 months ago? New ownership, he said carefully. Old place had tax trouble. We cleaned it up. And part of cleaning it up was letting a man called Mr. Cole sit in that booth every Thursday with an envelope. He didn't flinch. He set the towel down and folded his hands on the table. You going to shut me down? No, she said. I'm going to ask you why you let it happen. He stared at the sugar packets, weighing his answer. Because I wanted my cooks to keep working. Because after the storm, people didn't have cash for meals out, and someone said he could help me stay open if I let him run his schedule quiet. Because he made it sound like grown-ups were in charge, and I wanted to believe him. Simone nodded. It was the only answer that ever fit. You know what it cost? Too many things, he said. I'll tell the truth in a statement. I'll tell it plain. That will help, she said, even if it doesn't feel like it right away. He glanced toward the door where a teenager in a baseball cap had just held it open for an older couple. The owner smiled a little. I want this place to be worth what it looks like, he said. Simple as that. Then start today, Simone said. No more envelopes. If anyone comes asking, tell them the county learned to count. When she stood, the waitress slipped a paper bag into her hand. "Take one for the road," she said. "On the house." Simone thanked her and didn't open it until she reached the parking lot. Inside was a slice of peach pie, still warm. She smiled and set it carefully on the back seat like a promise someone had decided to keep. They swung by the river lots where unmarked vans had loaded and gone for months. Price showed her a clipboard a worker had left on a spool of cable. The sheet listed deliveries with cryptic notes: J blue, M short, R long. The initials matched codes in the ledger Tina had led them to. Together, ledger and clipboard turned rumor into record. "Good paper beats good speeches," Price said. "It also beats good lies," Simone replied. She walked the riverbank a few minutes, watching sunlight fracture along the water, and thought of the desert base, the shoebox of drives, the officer who thanked her and put a truth in a drawer. She wondered if that drawer ever opened again. Maybe this was the same truth insisting on air. Late afternoon brought her back to the motel for a quiet goodbye. Alvarez was on watch by the damaged office, Cap finally sitting at an angle that looked like his instead of a handbook's. "You did fine," Simone said. He shrugged. "I was scared half the time." "That means you were paying attention," she said. "Fear isn't your enemy. Panic is." He nodded, thinking that through. "I'll remember that." She walked the row of rooms one last time. Room 3's new lock gleamed. Room 7 looked ordinary again. Shades straight. Bed made. Lamp replaced. She paused at the vending machine where the blast had started and ran a finger along the dented metal. It hummed anyway. Stubborn thing. Evelyn called again just as Simone reached her Jeep. "My sister made me sit down and watch the new news," she said. "They said the county's cleaning house and that a woman helped them do it. They didn't say your name." "That's for the best," Simone said. "I wanted to say thank you," Evelyn continued, voice wavering. "I know it's your job, but you made it feel like more than that. You made it feel like we mattered." "You do," Simone said. "That's the whole point." When she hung up, the road west lay open and steady. Price waited by his SUV one driveway over. He raised a hand in a half salute that didn't need formality. She returned it with a nod and climbed in. The interstate stretched like a ribbon with mile markers keeping gentle count. Trees blurred to a soft green wall. Simone drove with the window cracked and let old memories line up properly for once. Her first salute. Her father's slow smile when she mailed home a photo from training. Her mother's neatly folded letters. A desert night with a contraband radio playing low. The heat of a warehouse map in her hands with coal logistics scrawled too proudly across the top. A shoebox of drives with zip codes that matched small towns and forgotten depots. A bus route timetable with the corners worn from years of being folded and unfolded by a man who believed the world worked better when people could get where they were going. She thought of Ray and how certain he'd sounded when he promised ghosts and corridors and pressure valves that replaced each other like parts on a line. She believed him about the pressure. She didn't believe him about the ending. Things don't end when you trace them properly. They reveal the people who insist on beginning them over and over, and then you learn their names and you write them down and you keep writing until even the quiet knows what to say. Near dusk, the sky opened just enough to paint the edges of the road gold. She pulled off at a rest area, sent Monroe a final update, and leaned back for 3 quiet breaths that felt like standing still in a crowded station without getting knocked off balance. The phone buzzed once with a reply. "Good work. Wheels are moving. See you at 9. Simone closed her eyes for a moment and pictured the motel not as a wreck but as a witness that found its voice. She pictured Evelyn unlocking the office door again when the tape came down and Alvarez learning when to trust his nerves and when to let them pass. She pictured the diner at closing with no envelopes on tables, just coffee rings and pie crumbs and people counting change without having to fear who might be counting them. She started the engine and merged back onto the road. The past had unfolded enough to explain the present. It hadn't closed. It rarely does. But the rhythm made sense again. Listen long, watch routes, write things down, hold steady while other people shake. It wasn't dramatic. It was work. The kind that makes tomorrow safer than yesterday in increments too small for headlines. Somewhere behind her, a neon sign flickered and decided to stay on. Somewhere ahead, a briefing room would smell like coffee and paper and questions asked too quickly. Between those places, Simone drove the way her father taught her to ride a route. Eyes up, hands sure, ready to stop for someone who needed a door held open. The road didn't talk back. It never had to. The bridges into Washington carried a Sunday hush, the Potomac running slate and steady beneath them. Simone Grant parked in the underground garage before sunrise and took the stairs two at a time, the air inside the federal building cool as a winter hallway. She signed the log, passed the metal detector, and rode the elevator without looking at her reflection. The door opened to carpet, glass, and the low murmur of government mornings. Captain Lydia Monroe waited in a conference room with the blinds half open and a pot of coffee that had been brewed on time, not well. Beside her sat two suits Simone didn't know. One wore a flag pin too bright for his lapel. The other had the stillness of someone who recorded details before he believed them. Monroe stood. "You beat my clock," she said. "Road was kind," Simone replied. They took seats. The shorter suit introduced himself as Deputy Director Harris. The other gave only a last name, Keene. Harris nodded for Simone to begin. She opened her notebook and spoke in the same measured cadence she used for radio traffic. Evergreen Motel events, Sheriff Riley's arrest, Leonard Cole's detonation distraction, Ray Langston at Alder Street, the ledger under room 3, Tina Carver's tip about the diner. Keene interrupted once. "You're asserting the motel was chosen as a pressure point, why not a warehouse or the diner itself?" "Because a motel looks ordinary," Simone said. "Ordinary places absorb noise. You can blame a gas leak and people nod." Harris wrote that down like a phrase he might use later. "And Cole? Negotiator. He sells balance to people who are drowning and calls it order." Monroe's mouth tightened into what passed for a smile. "She has a way of turning fine print into nouns you can hand to a jury." They moved through maps, photos, times. Harris asked how confident she was that the corridors reached beyond 2 states. Simone slid the ledger copy across the table, opened to pages marked with Tina's tiny stars. "Confident enough to build a case, not confident enough to rest." Keene's pen stopped. "You think there's another pump?" "There's always another pump," Simone said. "Ray bragged about pressure valves. People who talk that way don't trust single points of failure." Harris closed the folder. "You'll submit full debrief to Monroe's office. We'll coordinate with the U.S. attorney. Plea offers might shake more names loose." "Offers?" Simone asked. "Time is leverage," Harris said smoothly. "We choose the floor they land on." Simone held his eyes. "Whatever floor you choose, make sure it's the one where witnesses don't fall through." Monroe cut in before the air soured. "We'll protect Brooks, Alvarez, and anyone else named in those pages. The diner owner's already under a quiet umbrella." Keene leaned back. "One more point. You're an asset outside traditional chain. County unions are complaining about scope." Simone kept her tone even. "They can file a letter. I'll keep writing mine." Monroe ended it there. "Good work. Get some rest." Simone stood. "I'll rest when the ledger's duplicates are found." Keene's brows rose. "Duplicates?" She tapped the margin star. "People who don't trust phones don't keep a single book." The hallway outside smelled like new paint and old dust. Simone walked toward an alcove with a window that cut a clean rectangle of light on the floor DC's version of a view. Monroe caught up with 2 paper cups and handed one over. "You were gentler than I expected," Monroe said. "I'm saving my voice," Simone answered. Monroe tipped her head. "You kept this steady, Simone. You turned a sheriff into a footnote, but you know the part that keeps me awake. The part where corridors don't close. They reroute." Monroe nodded. "Take the afternoon. See your mother if you can." "I will," Simone said, "after one stop." Monroe didn't ask where. She had learned better. The stop was a quiet floor in a library 2 blocks away, a place where maps hid in drawers and old city plans waited for hands to remember them. Simone pulled a ledger-sized binder from a shelf marked Transportation Historic and laid a transparent grid over a photocopy of coastal routes. She slid a pen across 4 points: Savannah depots, the river lots, Alder Street, the diner. Then she drew a line to a shipping yard barely annotated in the corner Mason Pier, decommissioned on paper, active by rumor. She copied the coordinates and sent them to Sergeant Malcolm Price through the secure channel with a single sentence: "Don't knock. Just watch." The reply came 10 minutes later. On it: "Brooks okay. Alvarez says hello." She closed the binder and left the grid cleaner than she'd found it. Afternoon made a soft light over Columbia. Simone's mother, Irene, met her at the door with the kind of hug that resets a spine. The kitchen smelled like lemon and starch. A plant on the windowsill had grown 2 new leaves since Simone's last visit. Irene set 2 plates and a pitcher of tea on the table. "Your captain phoned," Irene said, sliding napkins into place. "She speaks like a person who gets up on time." "She does." They ate quietly. Irene asked small questions that mattered more than big ones. Did the motel clerk have someone to stay with? Was the young deputy getting coached by someone patient? Was the pie any good? Simone answered yes, yes, and better than it needed to be. When they finished, Irene poured more tea and looked at her daughter like she used to when Simone came home with scraped knees. "Your father would say you're keeping the bus on time," she whispered. Simone smiled at the table. "He'd bring me a paper route map and tell me which corners need new signs." Irene reached across and squeezed her hand. "He'd also tell you to rest your feet." Simone stayed an hour, helped rinse the plates, fixed a wobbly chair leg, and replaced a porch light. Small repairs make a house believe in tomorrow. When she left, Irene tucked a folded note into Simone's jacket pocket the way she had since boot camp. Simone didn't open it. She knew it would say the same 7 words it always did: "Keep your voice. Come home standing up." The call from Price came at dusk, when the city's buildings turned to silhouettes. "You picked a pier," he said. "Good instinct." "What did you see?" A box truck rolled in with no markings, 2 trips, just before sundown. No paperwork presented at the guard shack because the guard shack was empty. 3 men unloaded crates onto a flatbed bound for a smaller river slip. "We ran the plate on the flatbed, comes back to a landscaping company that hasn't mowed a yard in 2 years. "Who supervised?" Simone asked. "Not Ray, a tall man with a scar along his jaw. Went by Mr. Cole to the crew." Price paused. "Not Leonard, another Cole." Simone closed her eyes for 1 beat. "Valves." "Say again?" "Ray's pressure valves. Swap the name, preserve the function." "We hold off?" Price asked. "Hold and film," Simone said. "If we cut the hose before we map it, we lose the next turn." "You and your maps?" "They don't lie," she said softly. "People do." Back in D.C., Simone returned to the building for one last meeting. A junior analyst named Parker had pinged Monroe about zip code overlaps in the ledger and a cluster of corporate insurance filings that changed carriers on the same day. Parker spread spreadsheets like a card trick and highlighted a row that repeated across states: Cole Assurance Partners contingency coverage. "Looks like small policies," Parker said. "Storm, theft, business interruption. But the premium billing cycles match cash pickups logged on Tina's starred pages." "Insurance that pays when envelopes fall late," Simone said. Parker nodded. "We think Cole is a rotating title under a single corporate umbrella. Leonard is one signer. There are others." Simone remembered the second Cole at Mason Pier. "There are always others." Parker pushed a printout across the table. "Last thing. The Alder address was also listed as a temporary records depot for a short-lived company, Langford Storage. The registered agent dissolved it 3 weeks before your sting." "Langford," Simone said. "Close enough to hide in a sloppy ear." Parker smiled wryly. "Bad men like alliteration. Bad systems like it more," Simone said. She thanked Parker and left the floor with a copy of the filings. The elevator doors closed on her reflection and opened on a lobby that carried the clean chill of consequence. Night settled along the river like a steady breath. Simone walked from the garage to the memorial steps and sat where the city keeps its long memory. She ate half the peach pie with a plastic fork because it tasted like a receipt you can trust, and then she wrapped the rest and checked her phone. A message from Price waited with a grainy still. The scar-jawed Cole at Mason Pier, chin turned just enough to show a tattoo line vanishing under his collar. Another message followed, a second still of the same man shaking hands with someone beside a pallet. The someone wore a county windbreaker from 3 counties over. Simone typed 2 words, "Got him." Price responded, "Thought you'd say that." She stared at the water and let the city's lights turn to blurred coins. It felt like the moment after a storm when you can finally hear the insects again. The system wasn't gone, but it was lit well enough to count. Counting is how you learn what to carry, what to drop, and who to ask to step away from the lever. Her phone buzzed once more. Monroe. U.S. Attorney wants charges on Ray filed by Friday, Monroe said. Cole's counsel is rattled. They asked for a conversation. Let them rattle, Simone said. We'll speak when they remember the names in the ledger are people. Monroe was quiet a second. You did what you came to do. No, Simone said, standing. I did what the motel asked. Monroe knew better than to challenge the grammar. Get some sleep, Marine. Simone slipped the phone into her pocket and walked back toward the garage. A delivery truck hummed along the avenue. A bus braked at the corner, doors opening with the soft old sigh she had known all her life. A handful of riders stepped on and off, shift workers, students. A man in a suit who loosened his tie as if it weighed more than fabric should. The driver tapped the sign twice with his knuckle, a ritual for luck she'd seen in cities that don't talk to each other but behave like cousins. She paused at the curb and let the bus pass. On its side was a route number she recognized from childhood. For a moment she pictured her father at the wheel, nodding at a passenger who ran to catch him and made it with a laugh, the way small victories align a day. The aftermath of a case is rarely a finish. It is a recalibration. Offices write memos. Lawyers fold paragraphs into angles that fit. Reporters find verbs that sell. What remains beneath all that is quieter and heavier. A motel clerk who can sleep without a chair wedged under her doorknob. A rookie deputy who learns the difference between fear and panic. A diner owner who counts receipts without counting on men who prefer envelopes. Simone crossed the street, unlocked the Jeep, and slid behind the wheel. The engine turned over in the familiar way machines do when they trust the hands asking them to work. She set the radio low and drove toward a city that would file her name into a box labeled Debrief Complete. She knew better. The box is only ever a way to store the past until it's needed. And the past, she had learned, is a patient teacher. At the light, her phone lit up with one more photo from Price, this time a wide shot of Mason Pier under flood lamps. In the corner, a modest sign had been screwed onto the chain-link fence, authorized personnel only. Someone had crossed out the last word with a marker and written, honest. Simone let out a breath she didn't know she was holding and smiled once, small and real. Some corrections are quiet, some are permanent. She turned onto the bridge and let the road carry her forward. The city's glow behind her, the river beyond argument. The work ahead is clear as mile markers. Tomorrow would not be simple. It didn't need to be. The night air at Mason Pier was heavy with salt and engine oil. The water slapped against the dock piles like slow applause, the kind that hides impatience. Floodlights cast thin silver bars across stacked crates and coiled ropes. Somewhere nearby, a generator hummed, steady and low. Simone Grant crouched behind a stack of shipping containers, headset snug in place, eyes scanning the layout. A thin wind tugged at her jacket. The rest of the team, Sergeant Price, Deputy Alvarez, and 3 federal agents moved in staggered positions, each taking cover behind forklifts and pallets. Eyes on entry? Simone asked. Price's voice came softly through the earpiece. Confirmed. East gate unsecured. Guard shack empty. Copy. Any sign of Cole? Negative, but we've got movement at the slipway, 2 men unloading from a flatbed. Simone adjusted her scope, finding the glow of a cigarette between 2 figures. Both wore black jackets marked only with small white patches. MP Storage. She recognized the pattern Langston's shell branding, reused for plausible deniability. Alvarez whispered. "Third man coming from the trailer, looks like the one with the jaw scar." Simone steadied the lens. The man turned just enough for the light to catch him. Sharp cheekbones, hollow eyes, a scar tracing down from ear to chin like a stitched reminder. "Visual confirmed," Simone said quietly. "Target Scar Cole." Price responded, "Copy that. Orders?" "We wait until the load's complete, then we close the circle." They watched in silence as the men pried open wooden crates with crowbars, revealing smaller boxes wrapped in tarp. Simone zoomed in. Each was labeled medical supplies, disaster relief in faded blue stencil. "Same pattern as the Savannah thefts," she murmured. "They're rebranding stolen shipments." Alvarez asked, "What's inside those smaller boxes?" "Whatever they can sell faster than questions," Simone replied. At 22:41, a black SUV rolled slowly down the pier, its headlights dimmed. Simone felt the tension ripple through her chest like a second heartbeat. Price came through the channel again. "Vehicle inbound, 4 passengers, tinted glass." "Hold positions," Simone ordered. "No light until I say." The SUV stopped near the loading area. Scar Cole turned toward it, wiping his hands on his jacket. The rear door opened. A man in a dark coat stepped out, older, gray at the temples, posture that spoke of command. Simone's stomach sank. "That's Ray Langston's brother, Mason Langston," she whispered. "We've got a direct line to the core." Price exhaled audibly. "Then tonight's our shot." "Exactly, let's not miss." The man walked around the crates, inspecting one at random. He nodded, then tapped the side twice, a signal. The loaders began moving the smaller boxes toward a waiting tugboat moored at the slip. Simone switched channels. "Unit 2, prep drone cam. We need eyes on that vessel's ID number." A technician's voice answered. "Copy. Launching now." The tiny drone lifted silently into the night, its rotors barely a whisper. On Simone's tablet, the live feed showed the tug's worn lettering, Harriet M., Wilmington Registry. She marked it immediately. "That ship's registered under a holding company tied to Cole Logistics," she said. "Same shell that moved supplies during hurricane season." "Full circle," Price muttered. "They never changed the playbook." "No," Simone replied, eyes narrowing. "They just changed counties." At 22:50, a truck engine revved at the far end of the pier. Simone turned her scope. 2 more vehicles had arrived, 1 box truck, 1 van. Both bore magnetic decals for maritime security. "Reinforcements," Alvarez said. "More like muscle," Simone corrected. "They're keeping the pier locked while the load moves." The sound of chains clinking carried across the water. Workers began untying the mooring ropes. The tug's engine sputtered, coughed, then settled into a slow churn. Simone's voice hardened. "They're prepping to depart. Price time to cut it off." "Roger that. On your mark." "Mark." She raised her hand, signaling. 2 agents moved first, flanking left. Price's team advanced on the right, keeping low. The pier echoed with the soft percussion of boots on wood, and the hum of tension stretched thin. Then the first shout broke the stillness. "Federal task force, hands where we can see them." Flashlights cut through the dark. Scar Cole spun, reaching for the pistol at his belt, but Simone was faster. 1 clean step forward, weapon raised. "Drop it," she commanded. He hesitated, then tossed the gun aside. The clang rang across the dock. Mason Langston froze by the SUV, hands halfway up, calculating. His voice was calm, too calm. "You people sure like theater." Simone didn't blink. "You've had a long run, Mr. Langston. It ends tonight." He smirked faintly. "So did your father's bus route. Doesn't mean someone else didn't pick it up." Simone felt the jab but didn't show it. "You talk too much." "I talk because I'm free to," he said. Before she could respond, the tug's horn blared. The boat began to move, ropes dropping into the water. Simone snapped toward the slip. "Price, stop that vessel." Price and Alvarez sprinted forward. 1 agent fired a flare, its red light slicing through the night. The tug hesitated, its captain startled, then tried to push full throttle. Simone ran toward the edge, radio pressed to her ear. "Drone disable mode!" Copy activating sonic pulse. A faint hum filled the air. The tug's lights flickered, engine stuttered, then went dead. The boat drifted sideways, scraping against the dock. Price leaped onto the deck, tackled one of the crew, and secured the line. "Vessel secured," he shouted. Simone turned back just in time to see Scar Cole grab a crowbar from a crate. He swung hard, missed her by inches. She caught his arm, twisted, and dropped him with a move that came straight from the Corps' handbook. He hit the planks face first, the weapon clattering away. "Stay down," she said, breath steady. He spat seawater and words. "You don't get it. This doesn't stop anything." Simone crouched beside him. "Maybe not, but it stops you." Behind them, the sound of zip ties and shouted commands filled the air. The operation had turned. The warehouse lights snapped on, revealing the full scale of the smuggling line, dozens of crates labeled with humanitarian seals, hiding stolen tech, counterfeit meds, and cash bricks wrapped in wax paper. One agent called out, "We've got manifests, digital and hard copy." Simone walked over, eyes scanning the names. The shipping logs stretched across 2 years, dozens of ports, small towns, emergency supply routes. Each one another route built on someone's loss. She took a photo of the first page. "Evidence priority 1, she told the agent. "Chain of custody starts now." Mason Langston was already in cuffs when she approached. He was sweating now, his arrogance leaking away with the humidity. "You think this buys you anything?" he muttered. "It buys people a chance to live without you skimming their relief funds," Simone replied. He smirked again. "You're too late. There's always another Langston." "Maybe," Simone said, "but not tonight." At midnight, floodlights flooded the pier like daylight. Reporters waited behind the outer gate, cameras poised, the low buzz of distant questions already rising. Price joined her near the pier's edge, clipboard in hand. Federal inventory teams just confirmed total seizure value about $18 million in materials. $18 million, Simone repeated quietly, all stolen from disaster relief. "People donate blankets," Price said. "They turn them into profit." "Not anymore," Simone said. Alvarez approached, wiping sweat from his brow. "We've got 6 in custody, 2 hospitalized, none dead. Boat impounded. Mason's being transferred now." "Any sign of the missing manifests?" Simone asked. He shook his head. "But the files on the tablet match the old Cole Logistics format, enough to reopen 3 prior cases." Simone nodded. "Good, then the pattern ends here." A breeze rolled through, carrying the faint smell of diesel and salt. For the first time in weeks, the air didn't feel suffocating. Price leaned against the railing. "You ever stop moving long enough to enjoy the view?" Simone half smiled. "Views are for after paperwork." He chuckled softly. "You really are the least dramatic Marine I've ever met." "That's why I'm still here," she said. A few yards away, federal agents loaded boxes into evidence trucks. Alvarez supervised, clipboard steady, posture calmer now. He caught Simone's eye and gave a small nod. It was gratitude without words. She turned toward the water. The disabled tugboat drifted slightly, bumping the dock. The reflection of floodlights danced on the hull like silver ghosts. Simone spoke into her radio. "Monroe, pier is secure. Primary targets in custody. No civilian casualties." Monroe's voice crackled through. "Copy, Grant. Outstanding work. Extraction in 30 minutes." "Understood," Simone said. She looked out at the dark stretch beyond the river mouth. For once, it stayed still. By the time they wrapped the scene, the first thin line of dawn touched the horizon. The sky turned from black to iron gray to pale gold. The city's skyline shimmered faintly across the distance. Price zipped up a file bag. "Evidence trucks rolling out in 5. Langston's already en route to federal holding." Simone exhaled, a rare trace of relief in her voice. "Then we're done here. For now," he said. "You know these cases, they always try to grow roots again." "Then we'll keep cutting," she replied. She started toward her jeep, boots echoing softly against the damp pier. Every step felt heavier, but not tired, anchored. Behind her, the task force moved with quiet efficiency, cleaning up the remains of a system built on greed disguised as logistics. Before she climbed in, she paused one last time, taking in the view. The sun had broken the horizon fully now, light spilling over the water in wide, clean bands. Price called out, "You heading straight back to D.C.?" Simone nodded. "Debrief and maybe breakfast after." "You deserve one," he said. She smiled faintly. "Tell Alvarez to make sure Brooks gets her office back. Tell the diner owner the same thing about his table." "Will do." As the engines of the transport truck started up, Simone looked at the pier, once a hiding place, now just a working dock again. She thought of the names in the ledger, the miles of stolen routes, the quiet people who never made headlines but carried towns on their backs. Justice wasn't clean. It rarely was. But tonight, it was visible, and that mattered. She climbed into the Jeep, started the engine, and rolled out as the floodlights dimmed behind her. The road ahead glowed faintly in the early light. No chase this time, no running clock, just distance, clear and earned. The pier receded in the mirror until it became nothing but a thin line between water and sky. Simone kept driving. 2 months later, the city woke to headlines that finally said what locals had whispered for years. Federal task force breaks coastal corridor racket county officials tied to coal logistics. The words sat above a grainy photo of the Evergreen Motel sign and the pier where everything had unraveled. Inside the U.S. District Court for the Southern District, the air carried that special mix of cold marble and nervous perfume. Reporters filled the benches. Laptops clicked like insects. Every few minutes, a flashbulb cut through the quiet like lightning without rain. At the front, Ray Langston sat in a dark suit that fit too well for a man in chains. His lawyer kept whispering strategy, but Langston's smile didn't reach his eyes. Behind him, his brother Mason waited for his own hearing, hands folded, jaw set. To their left sat former Sheriff Riley, a small island of defeat in a sea of gray suits. When the bailiff called the case, the room rose as Judge Ellen Harrison entered. Her voice was steady and without ornament. "This court will hear arguments in United States versus Langston et al.," she said. "Let's begin." Simone Grant sat 3 rows back in plain clothes. She'd been advised not to testify today. The paper trail was enough, but she came anyway. Sometimes closure is something you watch, not speak. The prosecutor laid out the story clean. Logistics contracts that never existed, disaster funds rerouted through shell companies, relief supplies sold offshore under false registries. Each paragraph of the case was a brick in a wall that Simone had been building for years without knowing how high it would get. When the evidence technician projected a photo of the Evergreen Motel ledger, the courtroom leaned forward. "This," the prosecutor said, "is where the cover collapsed." Langston's attorney rose. "Your Honor, my client was a consultant. He never handled transactions personally." The judge lifted an eyebrow. "Then who signed the forms with his initials?" Silence answered. Simone watched Langston shift in his seat. The man who once promised ghost networks and pressure valves was trapped inside a system he'd built too tightly for his own escape. After closing arguments, the jury took 6 hours. The verdict was short, guilty on all counts. Mason Langston guilty of conspiracy and transport fraud. Riley guilty of obstruction and abuse of authority. When the judge read the sentences, she didn't look at the defendants. She looked at the gallery. "Public trust," she said, "is not an infinite resource. When you trade it for profit, you sell your neighbors by the pound." The gavel fell. The room exhaled. Simone closed her eyes once and let the sound settle like dust on a clean floor. Outside, reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. Questions flew like sparrows. "Agent Grant, is the investigation over? Will you comment on the Marine connection? Is it true you found the ledger yourself?" Simone kept walking, voice even. "No comment. The work speaks for itself." She didn't wait for more. She slid into a federal sedan where Price was already waiting, coffee in hand. "They don't make quiet headlines for the people who keep the lights on," he said. "They don't need to," Simone replied. "They just need to keep the lights on." He handed her a file folder. "Monroe sent this. You've got options now: training liaison, coastal compliance task lead, or a year's sabbatical if you want it." Simone flipped the folder open and read quietly. Every line felt like a crossroads. "Which would you take?" she asked. "I'd take the one where I get to sleep through an alarm for once," he said with a half-smile. Simone closed the folder. "I'll think about it." Price looked out the window. "Word is Brooks reopened the motel. New sign and everything." "That was fast," Simone said. "She used the restitution grant, painted the walls herself." Simone nodded. "Good. Places like that deserve second chances." 3 days later, Simone drove back south. The route was long but clear, the kind of drive that lets you relearn how to breathe. Pine trees blurred by, then open fields, then the familiar turnoff for the Evergreen Motel. A fresh sign hung above the office door. Evergreen Inn under new light. Evelyn Brooks was behind the counter, wearing a clean blouse and a smile that didn't look borrowed. She looked up, saw Simone, and stepped around the desk. "You came back," she said. "I said I would." Evelyn laughed softly. "They fixed the roof, even the vending machine." "I heard it still hums," Simone said. "Louder than before." They walked outside. The lot was newly paved, the rooms painted warm tan. Children played near the grass edge while a truck unloaded fresh linens. The place smelled like soap and hope trying again. Evelyn said, "They offered me a settlement. I turned half of it into pay raises for staff." Simone nodded. "That's the kind of accounting the world needs. Will you stay the night?" "I can't, but I'll take coffee for the road." They sat on the porch steps with paper cups. A truck rumbled past on the highway, and for a moment it sounded like the city bus her father used to drive. Simone closed her eyes and let it pass. Evelyn asked, "What happens to people like you after cases like this?" Simone smiled slightly. "We find new routes." "Always work to do?" "Always roads to check." Evelyn reached over and squeezed her hand. "You ever need a room, it's on the house." Simone stood. "Then I'll make sure the lights stay on here." The next morning in D.C., Simone met with Monroe one last time. The captain had a fresh stack of files on her desk and a cup of tea that had already gone cold. "You're turning down the liaison post?" Monroe asked. Simone nodded. "I want the field rotation in the southern corridor, the quiet counties. Less spotlight, more work." Monroe studied her. "Most people run from the quiet after a trial like this." "I was built for it," Simone said. Monroe sighed, smiling at last. "You're your father's daughter, Grant." Simone looked out the window. "Routes don't drive themselves." Monroe handed her a sealed envelope. "Then here's your next map." Simone opened it. A single page inside. An assignment to Task Force Route Integrity, focused on preventing infrastructure fraud along the Gulf Coast. Simple work, important work. Exactly her language. Behind her, a worker called out, "Ma'am, we'll have this open in a week." "Take your time," Simone said. "Good things deserve it." She stood there until the rain stopped. That evening, she returned to her small apartment outside Columbia. It was simple. One table, one couch, a few photographs. On the wall hung a bus route map her father had drawn years ago, laminated, corners yellowed, pen marks still sharp. She traced the lines with her fingertips. Every route led somewhere useful, no matter how small the stop. She thought of the motel clerk, the young deputy, the diner owner, all rebuilding their corners of the map. Her mother had left a new note on the counter when she last visited. "Pride doesn't mean noise. Sometimes it just means showing up again tomorrow." Simone smiled, turned off the light, and sat by the window. Outside, street lamps hummed and the world kept its steady motion. No sirens, no radio chatter, no flare guns, just the pulse of a world mending itself 1 mile at a time. She sipped the last of her coffee and whispered, "Roots are holding." Morning came clear. She rose before the alarm, packed a small bag, and stepped outside. The Jeep gleamed faintly in the early light. She slid in, started the engine, and waited for the dashboard hum. The radio picked up a gospel station mid-song. The lyrics talked about rising after storms. Simone tapped the steering wheel lightly, a small smile playing at the corner of her mouth. Before pulling out, she took a single photo from the glove box, an old training shot of her unit, faces young and sunburned, standing in front of a transport truck. She tucked it back carefully. Then she shifted into gear and headed east. The road stretched long and honest, lined with new signs that actually pointed where they claimed to go. For Simone Grant, that was enough.